Many successful dentists ask, should I buy another practice? And I just jumped head into the business of dentistry, particularly the goal of owning multiple locations. I learned two things that I didn't originally know or fully appreciate. So while you can do very well in dentistry, if you want a completely different level, like an 8-figure sum of money, this is how that's done. There's a couple misconceptions and just bad ideas surrounding the multiple practice route that I'd like to clear up for you. 90% of the time, a dentist's take-home income will actually go down rather than up when they buy a second practice. One last thing I'll share if you're thinking seriously about doing this route is Hey everybody, welcome to the Lifestyle Practice Podcast. I'm Steve Vandegraff. I'm going to be your host today. Hope you guys are having a solid week. I'm going to jump right in, and I wanted to talk with you about a question many successful dentists ask. Should I buy another practice? This is a very natural question to ask. If you own a practice right now, if you listen to this podcast, you're probably the entrepreneurial type. You probably look at places on your drive to work and think this would be a great location for a dental practice, or maybe you know older dentists in your area that are nearing retirement and have thought about this. I've only owned my own practice, so I may be biased to this question, but I'm going to share my thoughts on how you should approach it based off of what I've learned in my experience and working with other dentists. I practiced for 8 years in my one location, one doctor practice. But that actually wasn't the original plan. Back in dental school, I was for a time looking to specialize. It was third year and I had just completed a few surgical externships to different OMS specialty programs. And at the end of my third year, I went to what was then breakaway seminars with a good friend of mine. You may have heard of him, the incomparable Derek Williams, and just learned a ton there. It was basically a few days of lectures. It was great. I learned a ton, but it was the last session of the weekend that really excited me and changed my plan for what I was going to do. The topic was multi-location ownership and selling groups of practices to private equity. The numbers and the possibilities of that conversation exercised me enough to cause me to abandon my aspirations for becoming a specialist, and I just jumped head into the business of dentistry, particularly the goal of owning multiple locations. I studied and learned how to evaluate practices, how to determine EBITDA multiples, and I ended up sending out letters to the different places I was looking to practice in to see if anyone would be willing to sell me their practice and then eventually practices. I ended up finding my practice through a broker. I moved out to the city where I was going to practice, but I had to wait for about 2 to 3 months before I got my license. So during that time, I sent out another letter to everyone within an hour of where I was staying, again, targeting older dentists that were nearing their retirement age to seeing if they'd be interested in selling their practice. I got a lot of good leads from that, and over the next few months, I walked through 5 different offices and met with dentists and talked with them about acquiring their practices. So initially, I was gung-ho on this plan of owning multiple locations. The idea was to acquire them, fix the inefficiencies, ramp up new patients in production, and have multiple locations with really strong profits. Having multiple locations is much more valuable to a larger buyer, so it increases the EBITDA multiple on the sale of those practices. I'm sure you've heard of this strategy, and maybe you even know somebody who has done this and walked away with a large fortune. That was, for a time, my plan. But then my plan changed. I ended up closing on my first practice while I was talking with all those others about the subsequent practices. And as I began working, I learned 2 things that I didn't originally know or fully appreciate. The first was how demanding ownership and dentistry would be, even of one practice. It was a lot tougher than I had expected. I was growing the practice rapidly, hiring people, firing people, and doing a lot of dentistry. It was tiring emotionally and physically, and there were many days I just came home exhausted. I felt like I didn't have the reserves to really give my family the attention that they deserved. Many of you who are new into ownership or maybe just recently out of school probably understand the feeling I'm talking about right now. So I underestimated the workload of having one practice. Then I thought of what it would take to double that by acquiring another practice and then another. The second thing I learned quickly that I didn't appreciate before was the income potential in a one location practice. So while it was a lot of work and it was tiring, it was more than worth it. If you put the work in to become a high producer, build a strong flow of new patients, and build a team that matches your effort, the sky is really the limit for what a single location practice can do. So initially, I put off the plan to acquire multiple practices. Then after a while, I came to really enjoy my life and the income that we were having with one productive practice. So I decided to not pursue those other options anymore. Instead, I focused on my practice. I put some effort into learning real estate and used some extra bandwidth that way. And the rest I spent with my family, and that's kind of got me to where I'm at now. So in my experience, you don't have to own multiple practices. The benefits of owning just one practice. First of all, it's a lot easier to manage. You have one team, you see each of your employees every day, you know, or you should know, how things are being scheduled and if systems are being run properly. So the problems are smaller and they're easier to manage. Because of this, the ability to design your lifestyle is much easier. Do things right with your one practice and you can have a great lifestyle and a great income. And that's really our emphasis at TLP. That's why all of us have chosen one practice. Another benefit is obviously the risk is a lot lower. If things go sideways, something happens, it's a lot more manageable to turn the situation around, and you only have one practice loan to face. Nonetheless, let's talk about the benefits of multi-practice ownership. The biggest reason to do this, in my opinion, is the asset you build is much larger than with one practice. A profitable dental practice is an excellent asset to build and to one day sell when you exit, but it's not the same as 5 profitable dental practices. And since they're going to have a synergistic valuation, those 5 practices are going to sell for much more than 5 individual practices would. So while you can do very well in dentistry, if you want a completely different level, like an 8-figure sum of money, this is how that's done. But there are also other benefits. One is, if you manage your practice as well, you can potentially have significant freedom from the chair. I mentioned one practice setup can be a great lifestyle creator, and it can, but if you can manage multiple locations and multiple doctors right, you can build something even better where you aren't needed to do any clinical work if you don't want to. So the upside of the ideal scenario of multiple locations is pretty huge. However, the risks in equivalent measure are much larger. If things go sideways now, it is much more difficult to manage. The stakes are a lot higher, and you have multiple practice loans to contend with. So weigh out the benefits and risks of both paths carefully. There's a couple misconceptions and just bad ideas surrounding the multiple practice route that I'd like to clear up for you. The first is that buying a second or a third practice is going to make you more money. On the surface, it seems that this makes sense. 2 practices should make about twice as much as 1 practice. 3 practices should make about 3 times as much. I have a couple friends who are successful businessmen outside of dentistry, and this is what they often ask me. So, do you have another practice yet? Why don't you have more practices? What's going on? In fact, one maximized practice will do much better than a couple average practices. Here's a very interesting statistic for you, okay? Practice Financial Group, it's an accounting and consulting firm just for dentists. They shared that 90% of the time, a dentist's take-home income will actually go down rather than up when they buy a second practice. And I've seen this firsthand many times. You buy a second practice, your fixed overhead doubles, your staffing headache doubles, your management demand doubles, but there's still just one of you. So there are way more costs, there's way more to do, but there's less of you to do the dentistry than there was when you just had one practice. So numbers drop, income drops, time at home drops, and stress really increases. It is a completely different ballgame when you own multiple practices. You're only one person. You can't be in more than one place at one time or do more than one person is capable of doing. So you have to stop thinking of yourself as a dentist working at multiple locations and think of yourself as a manager of dentists that all work at different locations. Instead of doing teeth, you're now a CEO. Instead of dentistry, you become a master of hiring and training doctors to do the work for you. If you do it this way and you're successful, you will have huge freedom. Try doing it the other way, where you're doing the teeth. You're going to burn out fast and you're going to have much less income to show for it. A final thing I'm going to say, and this probably applies to everybody, whatever you decide to do, if your practice is doing $5, $6, $7, or $8,000 a day right now, you still have so much unmet potential in your current practice. You don't need to look anywhere else other than your own office to improve your situation. Grow and maximize what you have right now first. And this may take some time. It'll take a lot of work from you, but it will put you in a position with so many options. You may discover, like I did, that you can do great with one and just focus more on your life schedule and things outside of work. You may find that you want to expand to other locations, and great. If you've done this, you've proven that you've got what it takes to rock one practice so you can go on to another. An option I like more than that I haven't even spoken about is when you get to that point, you could just build one really large practice. So you'll need a really big facility, but you get the perks of the volume and the multiple doctors of a multi-practice setup, but it's all under one roof. So you get the perks of easier management, less overhead, but you still have the same profitability. Or you could also keep your practice the same size, just drop insurances and become even more profitable per unit of your personal time. So there's a lot of great paths, and the first step to all of them is to maximize what you have. If you need help getting your practice to this point, or if you need help navigating the decisions we covered today, reach out and connect with us. We'd be happy to learn about your situation and see if we can help. Steve, Matt, or Derek at thelifestylepractice.com. With that, everybody, have a great week.